So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court to protect their rights, even for weekend checks.
It almost looks and sounds like this guy that came on a boat is reading a question that he himself doesn't understand and hasn't written off his phone. Well, it now turns out that that is indeed the case. This guy and another guy were brought in to Question Time by an asylum seekers charity. These two guys and the CEO of the charity were allowed to train up these two guys who can barely speak English to come on Question Time, talk about the law and the ECHR. They also spoke about the Northern Ireland Protocol, even though they probably don't understand these things at all whatsoever. And the Telegraph have beautifully exposed this. Channel Migrants placed on Question Time by campaigners. So it's a pro-migration charity who coached these guys. And as I said, you had three of them able to ask questions. So here they are. This is the selfie they took when they went to Question Time. So that lady in the middle is the charity CEO. So not only was she conveniently given a place to go on Question Time, but she was also allowed to ask a question. All three of these lot got to ask questions in the audience. They were clearly given priority by the BBC, and those migrants that came across illegally, I mean, not only are they basically bringing criminals on the show, but also, I'm sorry, they haven't, as individuals, applied to go on Question Time via the normal route. They haven't written their questions themselves. Most people that ask a question in the Question Time audience, they can actually just say it. They don't have to sit there mumbling and reading off a phone because they've actually written it themselves and they actually speak English. Let's take a listen to Zia Yusuf's reaction, because Zia Yusuf was on that panel having to respond to these guys.
The BBC have been caught red-handed. Do you remember when they planted illegal migrants in the audience of Question Time to ambush me and ask me whether a reform government would deport them?
The reform policy is to deport all illegal immigrants in the UK within 5 years. So that would be, these are real people, that would be someone like you.
If you're in this country illegally, you will be deported back to the country from which you came.
Well, it turns out not only were those illegal migrants planted in the audience, they were literally coached on what to say by an open borders charity. This is according to the Telegraph in astonishing reports today. And the chief executive of this open borders charity also happened to be in the audience of that Question Time and just happened to have been randomly selected, of course, by Fiona Bruce to ask another question in which the British people were lectured to. Remember how insane this was when men who broke into the country illegally were given a national platform on the state broadcaster, remember, funded by you, to lecture you about the merits of having a secure border. And in fact, one of them, and I really couldn't believe this, he started reading from his phone, which was a bit of a telltale sign at the time that he was being told what to say and fed his lines. He started talking about how Britain shouldn't leave the ECHR, and even started talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol. I didn't realise that men who broke into the country from Iran just a short while ago happened to be experts in British constitutional law. Now we know why. They had been planted there and coached on what to say, fed their lines by this open borders charity. The BBC knew about this, and they were there for one reason and one reason only: to act as a vehicle and mechanism for open borders propaganda from the BBC. The fact that they were in the audience at all is a disgrace. The fact that the BBC concealed it is even worse. I'm afraid the BBC is morally bankrupt. And you may as well now at this point assume that every bit of news you see on the BBC is in fact a clandestine operation by an open borders charity.
Pretty embarrassing for the BBC, and it gets worse, folks, because take a look at this tweet from Zia Yusuf following that up. Now, he says here that he actually asked the BBC about these people in the audience after he went on. So Zia says, we now have confirmation the BBC planted them and they were coached on what to say by a charity pushing for open borders. The CEO of this charity, Jenny Regan, that's who that lady was also in the audience and chosen to ask a question. Note, when I formally complained, so he didn't just, you know, asked one of the producers on the way out, he formally complained. When I formally complained to the BBC about this and explicitly asked them if they, if the audience members were coached, the BBC refused to answer. Why would they refuse to answer if they had nothing that they knew they needed to hide? Very fishy. Zia says one of these men who broke into the country began reading a statement warning against Britain leaving ECHR, even featuring the Northern Ireland Protocol. I mean, that was just mad. That was absolutely mad. How did the BBC think that we were not going to notice that? Also, he says one of them specifically attacked me and my family because they had been coached to do so. He says to deliberately plant men who broke into Britain illegally in the audience, allow them to be told what to say and let them launch into attacks on reform and lecture the British people is disgusting behaviour. To conceal it is even more outrageous. They should apologise immediately. And this, of course, comes right after the BBC are having to cut staff and shows because no one's paying their licence fees anymore. We've heard that they're going to have to make 80 million quid in cuts, which I have to say that was quite small compared to their nearly 6 billion a year in income that they receive. This is what Kelvin Mackenzie from GB News said. He said, I presume the record 700 migrants who arrived the other day were whisked straight off to the Question Time studio. The BBC are making thousands of redundancies at the moment and should include Question Time chair Fiona Bruce and production staff who quite wrongly secretly organised the planting of asylum seekers in the audience. Yeah, I think that Fiona Bruce just thinks that she is, the queen who cannot possibly be touched and cannot possibly do anything wrong. But here, clearly, she was right off the mark. Also, Patrick Christie says, for me, it's the arrogance of the BBC to think the public wouldn't notice they'd planted illegal immigrants in the audience and had them coached by an open border charity. It was blindingly obvious. Yeah, I mean, the guy reading off his phone, unable to speak English, I mean, it was so clear, so clear. I mean, maybe you would think, oh, he's put it through Google Translate, and so now he's reading it off. But then talking about the ECHR and the Northern Ireland Protocol, you just wouldn't expect that, would you? Something seemed fishy about it, and now all has been revealed. But I don't believe that we have heard from the BBC yet. I hope that they will put out some kind of apology on this. John Cleese says the BBC is under a duty to provide news, not to create it. Short and sweet, very well said by John Cleese there. And on that note, let's end this video. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I'm Chloe Dobbs. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to our channel down below. It's free and it's the best thing that you can do to support us. Also means that you will see more of our videos, which of course has to be a great thing, doesn't it? Thanks, folks. See you next time.